You don't really notice how empty the sky feels until you're alone under it. Out here in Whitlow County, the nights go so dark that the stars look fake, like someone punched holes in a black curtain just to let God peek through. I'd lived here my whole life, 31 years in the same house, on the same cracked dirt road that never showed up right on GPS. The air always smelled of hay, diesel, and river mud. The closest neighbor was half a mile east, and the only thing louder than the crickets was the sound of your own heartbeat when the wind stopped. That night, it was August 14th. I remember because the air was so dry it made my nose bleed earlier that morning. I'd been hauling hay bales for the Miller farm and came home with dirt caked under my nails and a sunburn that made my shoulders sting. All I wanted was cold beer and silence. The first strange thing happened around 9:47 p.m. I was on my porch, drinking from the bottle, watching the fireflies blink along the tree line. The power had flickered twice earlier that evening. Old lines, I thought, but when the third flicker came, the lights didn't come back. Just me, the dark, and that damned quiet. Then I noticed something moving across the cornfield. Not in it, above it. At first, I thought it was the Miller boy's drone again. He liked flying it late at night, to spook the dogs. But this wasn't darting or buzzing. It glided. Slow. Deliberate. Like it was choosing where to go next. A light soft blue, no beam, no sound, hovered 50 feet above the field. It pulsed once, then split into two. And I swear to you, they moved like they were searching. I remember standing up, bottle in hand, trying to convince myself it was lightning, or maybe just my eyes adjusting to the dark. But the longer I watched, the more I could feel that low vibration in the air, like when a train's coming down the track, and you feel it before you hear it. Except there were no tracks here. I turned off the porch light to see better. The blue orbs had merged again into one, rising higher, almost playful, like a soap bubble caught in slow motion. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. When I looked, the screen was white, no icons, no signal bars, just blank white light. I muttered, "The hell?" and looked back up, and it was right above me. Not the light anymore. A shape, perfectly circular, maybe 20 feet wide. No wings, no rotors. Silent. The air around me shifted, heavy, static-filled. My hair stood up on my arms. The bottle slipped from my fingers and shattered at my feet, but I didn't hear the glass break. There was no sound. Nothing. Then a whisper in my head. "Stay still." It wasn't my voice. It wasn't a thought, either. It was inside my mind, like someone breathing words straight into my skull. The object tilted slightly, and for a second I saw the underside. A pattern of lights in perfect symmetry, like honeycomb or circuitry. They pulsed rhythmically. My chest tightened. My body wanted to run, but something deeper told me I wouldn't get far. The air pressure changed again. My ears popped. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it shot straight up, vanishing into the stars like it had been swallowed whole. The sound came back in a rush. Crickets, wind, the faint hum of my refrigerator kicking on. I stumbled inside, shut every window, and sat in the dark, trying to breathe. I told myself it was a drone, maybe military, maybe some weird weather thing. But the next morning, I found something in the cornfield. A perfect circle, burned into the earth, 20 feet wide. No fire, no footprints. Just flattened, blackened stalks. The smell of ozone clung to my clothes the rest of the day. For the next few nights, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me twitch. The cows wouldn't go near that side of the property. My dog, Jasper, sat staring at the tree line, growling low and constant until dawn. By the third night, I started hearing it again, the hum. Faint, low, almost like electricity under the skin. It wasn't coming from the sky this time. It was coming from the ground. I pressed my ear to the floorboards. It was there, a deep, slow thrum that didn't stop when I cut the main breaker. That was when the phone started ringing. No caller ID, just the screen flashing white. When I picked it up, the only sound was breathing. Deep, wet, too slow to be human. I hung up. 5 minutes later, it rang again. Same thing. By the fifth call, I threw it out into the yard. I thought it would stop. But that night, at exactly 3:07 a.m., the house lights flickered on by themselves. The TV turned on too, No signal, just static. And through the static, I heard a voice say, "We see you, Daniel." That was my name. No one else calls me that. Not even my mother. She calls me Danny. I didn't sleep again after that. The next morning, my truck battery was dead. My watch stopped at 3:07, and when I stepped outside, there was a smell in the air, like burned metal and rain. In the field, the black circle had grown, twice as big now. And right in the center, something glimmered, small, metallic, perfectly round. When I bent down to touch it, the hum came roaring back. Then nothing. Just a blank. I woke up in my bed, sun pouring through the curtains, clothes still dirty, ears ringing. The thing from the field? Gone. The only proof it happened was a thin, circular scar burned into the palm of my left hand. And the hum hasn't stopped since. I thought I could just ignore it, that if I didn't talk about it, didn't think about it, it would fade like a bad dream. But the thing about dreams is, they don't leave marks on your skin. The burn on my palm never healed right. It wasn't red anymore, just a faint silver circle, like someone pressed a coin against my hand and left it there too long. It didn't hurt, but sometimes it vibrated, like there was something alive under the skin. 2 days after that night, the humming got louder. Not constant, but pulsing, coming and going in waves. I'd be feeding the chickens or fixing a fence, and suddenly my vision would fuzz, my ears would ring, and that low-frequency buzz would start up again. The cows were the first to act strange. They'd all face the same direction at once, heads raised toward the tree line, not moving. You could scream, throw rocks, blast the truck horn. They wouldn't react, just staring. That's when I called my neighbor, Earl Miller, to come take a look. Earl was 70 if he was a day, gruff as sandpaper and mean to everyone except his dogs. I figured he'd roll his eyes, tell me I was working too hard. But when he saw the field, he didn't laugh. He walked out to the edge of the burned circle, crouched down, touched the dirt. His fingers came up black and greasy. "This ain't fire," he muttered. "It's radiation burn. Soil's cooked from the inside." He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd known him, Earl looked scared. That night he took his dogs and stayed at his brother's place in town. Said he'd wait this weirdness out. The silence that followed was heavy, like the land itself was holding its breath. The next evening, my radio started picking up something. It wasn't music. It wasn't static, either. Just 3 short tones, repeated every 15 seconds. Beep, beep, beep. I turned the dial, but no matter where I tuned, those tones came through. At exactly 3:07 a.m., it stopped. That same minute, my porch light flickered on by itself again. Jasper, my dog, started barking like he'd lost his mind, snarling at the front door, hackles raised. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside, half expecting a coyote. But the yard was empty. No wind, no sound. Then Jasper whimpered, a sound I'd never heard from him before, and backed away from the field, his tail tucked, eyes wide. That's when I saw it. Something moving through the corn. Not walking, gliding. Tall, thin, bending the stalks without breaking them. I couldn't see its face, but I swear I saw light reflecting off something smooth and gray. I fired once, boom echoing across the empty fields. The shape didn't flinch, didn't run. It just stopped. Then the corn bent outward, flattened in a perfect circle, and a low hum rolled through the ground like thunder trapped under the soil. The power went out again. The hum got louder. The air thickened, pressing against my chest until I could barely breathe. I stumbled backward onto the porch, clutching my head. Then, through the static roar in my skull, I heard it again. "Daniel. Clear. Calm." Inside my mind, "You've seen us." I shouted, "Get the hell off my land." But my voice didn't even echo. It felt like the sound was swallowed before it left my mouth. Then, just as suddenly, the pressure lifted. The air cleared. The hum died. The lights flickered back on. When I looked again, the circle in the corn was gone. No prints. No shape. Nothing. But Jasper wouldn't stop shaking for hours. The next morning, I found something on the porch. A piece of metal. No, not quite metal. Lighter than aluminum, smooth as glass. A small disc about the size of a coin, etched with 3 perfect concentric rings. When I held it, The burn on my hand lit up. No heat, just a faint blue glow, like the scar was reacting to it. I dropped the thing instantly, but the glow in my hand stayed for a few seconds before fading again. That was when I started keeping a journal. Times, sounds, lights, everything. If something happened to me, I wanted someone to know it wasn't in my head. Day 1, lights return over Northfield. Day 2, humming beneath floorboards. Day 3, static through every device. Day 4 to 3:07 a.m. pattern. Day 5, lost 3 hours. No memory. I didn't even notice that last one at first. It was Earl who told me. He came by one morning, pale and jittery. He said he'd seen lights above my house at dawn, bright enough to silhouette the roof. He tried to call, but my phone went straight to voicemail. Only thing was, I remember going to bed at midnight and waking up at 7, but my alarm clock said 10:12. 3 missing hours. And when I checked the cameras I'd set up around the house, the footage was gone. All 5 memory cards had been wiped clean. Only one clip remained, 6 seconds long. It showed me sleeping. The clock beside my bed read 3:07 a.m. Then there was a flash, pure white light, and everything went black. Over the next week, things escalated. Animals around town started acting strange, dogs disappearing, cows found mutilated, their eyes missing but no blood spilled. The sheriff blamed coyotes. But everyone in Whitlow knows coyotes don't leave surgical cuts. By then, I'd stopped trying to sleep at night. I sat on the porch with my shotgun and flashlight, staring at that damn field until dawn. And one night, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A man, or what looked like one, standing in the middle of the road. Skin pale, clothes hanging like wet rags. He was too tall, his shoulders almost brushing the branches above. I called out, "You lost?" He didn't answer, just tilted his head slightly, like he was curious. Then, faster than I could blink, he was gone. No running, no sound, just vanished. I nearly dropped the gun. My flashlight flickered. When I shone it on the ground where he'd stood, there was a handprint burned into the asphalt. 5 fingers, longer than any human hand. The same faint blue glow. By now, every night was a war with myself, sleep or stay awake. One meant exhaustion, the other, more visions. Then came the night I saw the car. It was just after midnight, when a pair of headlights appeared down the road. I stepped out, relieved, thinking maybe Earl or the sheriff was checking in. But the car never got closer. It stayed there, half a mile away. Lights pointed at me, but not moving. After 10 minutes, I walked down the road to meet it. But as I approached, the headlights dimmed, then lifted off the ground. Not slowly. Straight up. Hovering above the treetops, the 2 lights merged into one bright sphere, like the one from the first night, and then it shot into the clouds. My ears rang so loud I thought I'd go deaf. When I stumbled back to the house, my clock read 3:07 a.m. again. The next morning, the sheriff showed up. He said Earl was missing. His truck had been found half a mile from the Miller farm, engine still running, doors open. No footprints. But on the hood was something burned into the paint, a symbol. 3 circles intersecting, identical to the rings on the disc I'd found. The sheriff asked if I'd seen anything. I lied and said no. But that night, I dreamed of Earl standing in my field. He was naked, eyes wide, staring straight up. And from above, a beam of blue light descended, swallowing him whole. When I woke up, the scar on my hand was glowing again. And through the ringing in my ears, a voice whispered softly, "He's with us now." That morning, my cows were gone. Every single one. No fences broken. No gates left open. Just gone. I walked the property till noon, screaming, searching. When I reached the edge of the woods, I found something carved into the dirt, circles again, connected by thin lines like constellations. And in the center, half buried, was the metal disc. The same one I'd thrown away. Only now it wasn't cold. It was warm, pulsing, like a heartbeat. I knew what it meant. They weren't done with me. That night, I left the porch light off. Sat inside with the gun, waiting. The hum started earlier, around midnight this time. The ground trembled, the air thickened, the lights flickered. And then, from the field, came a soft blue glow. I stepped to the window. Shapes. 5 of them. Tall. Thin. Moving like liquid. They stopped at the edge of the yard. One lifted its head, featureless, no mouth, no eyes, but I felt it looking at me. The hum grew louder. The house shook. And then, in my head, I heard the words that froze my blood. It's time. My name's Evan Clark, and this is the part of the story where everything still made sense. Before the lights. Before the missing time. Before I realized that some things in the forest aren't alive the way we understand it. I grew up in a town called Whitlow Ridge, population maybe 300 if you counted the dogs. My family's been out there for 3 generations, tucked between the Appalachian foothills and a dense stretch of government-owned forest. It's the kind of place where the sky feels too big at night, so wide and black that it starts to feel like it's watching you back. After my father died last winter, I started coming up to our old hunting cabin more often. It wasn't much, just a single room, propane stove, and a hand-dug well, but it was quiet. I told myself I came there to grieve, to get away from town. But the truth? I think part of me just wanted to disappear. The first few days were uneventful. Chopping wood, listening to static-filled AM radio, feeding the stray dog that hung around camp. Nothing strange until the 3rd night. Milky Way the night sky was wrong. It started small. Around 11:30 p.m., I noticed the dog Scout, whining at the window. Not barking, not growling, just crying, like something hurt deep inside her. Then I heard it too. A low hum. Not loud, not mechanical, more like a feeling that vibrated in your teeth. I stepped out onto the porch, flashlight in hand, and the first thing that hit me was the air. It was dead still. Not a single breeze, not a rustle from the pines. The forest was holding its breath. Then I saw them. At first, I thought they were stars, 5 bright points arranged in a perfect V-shape, moving across the horizon. But they weren't stars. They were too low, too deliberate. The lights drifted over the tree line, then stopped dead in the air. No noise, no wings, just silent, hovering presence. I remember whispering, "Helicopters don't do that." Then one of the lights detached from the formation. It descended slowly, like it was being lowered by invisible strings, and stopped just above the far ridge. The hum grew louder, still not sound, but vibration. I could feel it pressing on my chest, deep and rhythmic, syncing with my heartbeat. And then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanished. All 5. Gone. The night snapped back into its usual darkness. The wind returned. The cricket started up again like someone hit play. Scout bolted under the cabin, and I just stood there, staring at empty sky, wondering if grief could make you hallucinate. The signs in the morning. I didn't sleep much. When dawn came, I found something strange out by the edge of the clearing. 3 perfectly round indentations in the soil, spaced in a triangle, each about a foot deep. The ground smelled like ozone, sharp and metallic, the way the air smells before a thunderstorm. I took pictures on my old phone. Later, when I checked, the images were corrupted, just streaks of green and purple static. Every other photo on that phone was fine, just not those. That's when I decided to drive into town, about 40 minutes away. I needed to clear my head, grab supplies, maybe talk to someone. But about 10 minutes down the dirt road, my truck's engine sputtered and died. Battery was fine. Gas tank full. It just stopped. And that's when I saw it, on the ridge to my left, half hidden in the morning mist. A glint. Something metallic, reflecting the sun. It vanished when I blinked. The radio message. Back at the cabin that night, I tried to distract myself with the radio. The AM band was mostly static, but at 1:13 a.m., I caught a faint signal. A voice. A woman's, repeating the same phrase over and over through the distortion. Coordinates received, Whitlow Ridge, Phase 1. Then it cut to static again. I didn't even realize I'd been shaking until the flashlight slipped out of my hand. The next morning, I packed everything. I told myself I was leaving, but when I tried to drive out again, the road was gone. Not washed out, not blocked, just gone. The path I'd driven a dozen times before now ended in dense forest. No tracks, no sign of the gravel road. And the weirdest part? The trees looked too perfect, evenly spaced, identical height, like something had planted them overnight. That's when I knew something was very, very wrong in those woods. That night, I made a fire inside the cabin and kept my rifle close. Scout refused to come indoors. She just stared into the tree-line, ears flat, whining softly. Every few minutes, I heard faint clicks from the woods. Not branches breaking, clicks. Like the sound of metal tapping against metal, in pairs of three. Click, click. Click, click, click. Sometimes closer. Sometimes farther away. And around 2:30 a.m., I heard footsteps on the roof. Slow, deliberate, heavy. I froze. The fire popped, and the footsteps stopped immediately. Then nothing. Not silence. Just the sound of my own pulse, pounding so loud it hurt. Flying saucer, the sky split open. I didn't go outside until dawn. When I did, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Every tree around the cabin had thin, straight cuts running up their trunks, like surgical lines, perfectly parallel. Each one oozing a thin, glowing residue that pulsed faintly under the morning light. And directly above my cabin, hanging in the air like a mirage, was a circular distortion. Not visible at first, only when the light caught it just right, like the sky itself was bending. Then came that sound again, the low hum. And from that distortion, for a fraction of a second, I saw movement. A shape. Long, thin, impossibly tall. Then it was gone. That was the night I stopped pretending it was grief. Stopped pretending it was imagination. Because something out there had seen me first. And I knew, deep down, that whatever was behind those lights in the pines hadn't left. When you live long enough alone in the woods, you start to understand its rhythm. The way wind rises before a storm, the way crows fall silent before sunset, the way night settles over the land like a held breath. But after that night, the forest around Whitlow Ridge forgot its rhythm. Nothing was right anymore. Evergreen tree, the forest that wasn't there yesterday. The morning after the sky bent, I decided to hike toward the ridge, where I'd seen the light descend. I thought if I could just see what was there, maybe I could explain the missing road, the radio message, the hum that followed me into my dreams. Scout refused to come. She stayed under the porch, hackles raised, trembling so hard I could hear her nails scraping the wood. I left food for her and started walking. The forest looked newer. That's the only word that fits. The pines stood straighter. The moss was unnaturally green, the air thicker, like breathing through glass. After 30 minutes, I realized I didn't recognize anything. Not the hills. Not the creek. Not even the sun's position made sense. I tried using my compass. The needle spun. Nonstop. And then the forest went silent. Every sound, birds, wind, even my own footsteps, stopped. That's when I heard the whisper. Evan. It came from everywhere at once. A voice soft as wind, but with something wrong in the rhythm, like someone imitating human speech, without understanding it. I spun around, scanning the trees, but saw no one. Then I noticed it. A tree with symbols carved into its bark. 3 vertical lines intersected by a perfect circle. The cuts were smooth, like they'd been burned in with precision tools. I touched one, and the entire tree vibrated beneath my hand. A pulse. Slow, steady, alive. I stumbled back and fell into the dirt, breathing hard. The forest around me seemed to ripple. The air shimmered faintly, like heat haze, and I thought I saw something moving inside the distortion. Shapes that weren't trees, figures too tall, too thin. I ran. 3 o'clock, the time that slipped. When I finally reached the cabin again, my watch said 4:22 p.m. But the sky was pitch black. The fire I'd left smoldering was cold ash, and the canned stew I'd left half-eaten was growing mold. 3 days had passed. I checked my phone, dead. The clock on my truck, blinking zeros. That night, I didn't light a fire. I just sat in the dark, clutching my father's rifle, listening to Scout panting softly beneath the porch. Around 1 a.m., I heard something outside. Not footsteps. A dragging sound, like metal scraping bark. Then the doorknob turned. Slowly. My breath froze. I aimed the rifle. The knob clicked once more, then stopped. For a full minute, nothing. Then came a faint tap, tap, tap on the window glass. 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath. And then I heard it, whispered through the wood. Come back. Compass the dead zone. The next morning, I found a path I'd never seen before, narrow, carved through the trees in a perfect straight line. The soil was scorched black, as if lightning had struck repeatedly along the same route. I followed it. I don't know why. Maybe because I couldn't stand sitting still. Maybe because part of me already knew this place wasn't really mine anymore. The further I walked, the quieter everything became, until even my own footsteps seemed muffled. Then, about a mile in, the path ended abruptly, at a clearing. In the center stood a metal structure, half buried, about the size of a van. No markings, no rust, perfectly smooth. When I touched it, the metal felt warm, like skin. And that's when I saw my reflection. Only it wasn't. The reflection blinked before I did. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and the surface shimmered like liquid. Then, faintly, words appeared across it, not carved or written, but forming out of light. You were chosen before you were born. The letters vanished as soon as I read them. That was the first time I screamed. High voltage static and the sky. When I made it back to the cabin, everything electronic was dead again, flashlight, phone, truck. But the radio had turned itself on. It hissed with static, then played a man's voice, calm and measured, like a broadcast from somewhere else. This is Phase 2. Containment successful. Subject responsive. Do not interfere with observation. Then static again. I tore the plug from the wall and threw the radio outside. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the tree line until sunrise, half expecting to see faces peering from the dark. At one point, I did see something, not faces, but lights, faint and white, weaving between the trees like floating embers. Every few seconds, one of them would blink and move closer, then gone. Scout growled, low and trembling, staring in the same direction. Flying saucer the mark. In the morning, I woke with blood under my fingernails and a small, circular bruise behind my ear, deep blue, perfectly round. I didn't remember touching anything, but when I pressed on it, I felt something click. Inside my head. For a second, I heard the forest hum, the trees vibrating in unison, like hundreds of engines idling under the soil. And I swear I could feel something beneath me. Not roots, not rock, but metal. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. That's when I realized Whitlow Ridge wasn't a place anymore. It was a system, a field, and I was inside it. That night, I wrote in my father's old journal, trying to make sense of what was happening. But as I wrote, the words began to change. Letters twisted, rearranged themselves into symbols I didn't recognize, the same ones carved into the trees. I stopped when the last page filled itself with a single sentence in perfect English. They will come when you stop running. I tore out that page and burned it in the stove. The smoke rose thick and black, and for a second, only a second, I saw something take shape in it. A face. Not human. Elongated. Eyes like silver coins. It opened its mouth, and I heard that same hum spill from the smoke, vibrating the cabin walls. Scout yelped and bolted into the trees. I never saw her again. That was the night I stopped writing. The night I realized Phase 2 was over, and whatever came next would not be human. They always say abductions happen in silence. That's not true. When they came for me, the woods screamed. Waning crescent moon, the sound beneath the silence. It was the night after Scout disappeared. I hadn't slept in days. I'd nailed the windows shut, shoved the couch against the door, kept the rifle within reach. I tried the radio again out of desperation. Only static, until it wasn't. For a fraction of a second, the static stopped. And in that breath of silence, I heard breathing. Not mine. Deep, slow, mechanical. Then came a voice, close enough to feel against my ear. Stay awake. The cabin lights flickered. The air pressure shifted. Heavy, crushing, like diving deep underwater. And then the hum started again. That same low, chest-rattling frequency, rising from beneath the ground. It got louder, denser, until the cabin itself began to shake. The nails groaned in the wood. Dishes fell from the shelves. And outside light. Not moonlight. Not a beam. A column. Pure, white, almost liquid light that poured down from the clouds straight into the trees outside my cabin. Every leaf, every blade of grass glowed from within. The entire forest looked alive. I remember thinking, stupidly, that it was beautiful. Then the beauty turned to terror, because something stepped through the light. The thing in the doorway. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was tall, 7, maybe 8 feet, with limbs too thin to carry its body, yet it glided forward effortlessly. The skin wasn't gray or green. It was translucent, like wax stretched over wires. And its eyes, they weren't eyes, just 2 spheres of light, spinning slow and soundless in their sockets. When it turned toward me, the hum stopped. That was worse than the noise. The sudden absence, like the entire forest was waiting for me to do something. I raised the rifle and fired. The sound barely registered. The bullet passed through it like smoke. Then it looked inside me. I can't explain that part. It didn't move, didn't touch, but I felt its gaze slide through my skull, peeling open memories. Childhood, my father's voice, the night he died, every regret, every secret. And through it all, I heard that voice again, not from outside, but inside my head. You are open. I don't remember falling, but I remember the ground moving beneath me, like the earth itself had turned into liquid metal. And then I was somewhere else. New moon, the room of light. No cabin, no forest, just white, endless, soft, pulsing white. I was standing, or maybe floating, inside a space without walls, yet I felt enclosed. There were others there too. Shapes. People. I saw a woman in a hospital gown, a boy clutching a stuffed bear, an old man staring blankly ahead. All of them silent, all of them glowing faintly, like their skin had been dusted with starlight. Then they moved. Not toward me, but with me. Like we were all being pulled by invisible strings toward a central point, a vertical column of blinding light, pulsing rhythmically. Each pulse made my bones vibrate. Each vibration filled my mind with fragments, words, images, sounds that weren't mine. A spinning planet, rows of glass tubes, something buried under mountains. And then her face, the woman from the radio, her voice whispering again. Containment complete. Subject stable. I tried to speak, but my mouth wouldn't open. Something was inside it. I looked down and saw thin black threads weaving into my skin, disappearing beneath the veins. They were stitching me to the air. Skull the experiment. Time didn't exist there. Every thought stretched into eternity, and every second collapsed into nothing. At some point, maybe hours, maybe years, the light dimmed, and I saw them clearly for the first time. 3 of them, standing over me. Their heads elongated, skulls smooth and featureless. Their fingers split into multiple joints, moving like liquid shadow. They didn't speak, but I understood them anyway. Thoughts pressed into my mind like hot iron. Observation continues. The vessel adapts. Fear assists growth. I screamed, but the sound came out wrong, reversed, echoing inward. Then one of them leaned close, its face inches from mine. It reached forward, touched my chest, and I saw my own heart beating through my ribs. Not physically, in my mind, like my body was just data to them. Then something else began to grow inside me. A warmth, deep in my stomach, spreading upward like liquid fire. And through the pain, I saw the truth, or what they wanted me to believe. Flashes. The cabin from above, surrounded by geometric patterns etched into the earth. Massive black structures beneath the soil, humming in unison. Thousands of lights moving beneath the surface, like veins of molten silver. Whitlow Ridge wasn't just land. It was machinery. Gear the breakdown. At some point I woke up. I was lying on the floor of my cabin, naked, covered in a fine layer of ash. The air smelled like burnt metal. Every clock in the cabin read 3:33. AM or PM, I don't know. My watch was gone. My rifle melted. The windows shattered outward. When I tried to stand, I fell immediately. The bruise behind my ear was gone, replaced by a faint scar shaped like a circle. And the hum, it never stopped. I could still hear it, even when everything else was silent. It wasn't in the ground anymore. It was in me. Every heartbeat carried that same frequency, deep and constant, like something alive inside my chest. And for the first time, I understood the message they'd been whispering all along. You were chosen before you were born. They didn't just take me. They built me. I don't know how long I lay there. The sun rose. The forest moved again, but nothing felt real. When I finally staggered outside, the clearing was different, wider, smoother. The trees closest to the cabin were gone, replaced by perfect blackened circles burned into the soil. I realized then that the night they came down wasn't just about contact. It was about conversion. Something inside me had changed, and the forest knew it, because when the wind blew through the pines, I heard my own name whispered in the rustling leaves. Evan, you're almost ready. They tell you that waking up means safety, that if you open your eyes somewhere familiar, the nightmare is over. But the moment I woke up, I knew that wasn't true, because the world was too perfect. Hospital the room. I came to in a small white hospital room, the kind with a single bed, and 4 bags, and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. There was a window to my right showing an overcast sky, a hill beyond it. For a moment, I thought I'd finally escaped the cabin. Then I looked closer. The hill outside the window never moved. No birds, no wind, just stillness, like a photograph pasted on glass. A nurse entered. Her badge said, Whitlow General. She smiled too quickly, too wide. Good morning, Mr. Clark. You had quite the fall. Her voice was soft, but off, like a recording played a few seconds out of sync with her lips. How long was I out? I asked. You've been here 3 days. 3 days. That number again. My skin prickled. I looked down at my arm where the 4 went in. There were bruises, the same perfect circles as before, faint but unmistakable. Where's my dog? I asked. The nurse paused just a little too long. We didn't find any animals, sir. Her eyes didn't blink. Not once. Candle the visitors. Later that evening, a man in a gray suit came in. No name tag. He introduced himself as Dr. Ellery. You experienced some form of environmental trauma, Evan. Hallucinations are normal. He had a small metal device in his hand, a pen light, I thought. But when he pressed a button, it emitted a faint hum that vibrated in my teeth. Does this sound familiar to you? He asked. My blood went cold. Turn it off. He didn't. He just stared at me, eyes unblinking, and said quietly, You're reacting exactly as expected. Then he smiled. That same too wide smile. I lunged forward, ripped the 4 from my arm, and stumbled toward the door. It wasn't locked. They hadn't needed to. Because when I opened it, the hallway outside didn't make sense. It was endless. The same door repeated down both sides, perfectly identical, disappearing into white light. And in that moment I realized I wasn't in a hospital. I was back there. Door the white maze. I started running. My bare feet slapped against tile that felt too smooth, too cold. Every few steps, the lights flickered, and in those flashes, the hallway changed. Sometimes it was wood-paneled, like my cabin. Sometimes metallic, lined with pipes and black vents. Sometimes pure white void. The transitions didn't make noise. They just happened, like reality flipping pages in a book. At some point, I passed a window. On the other side wasn't a landscape, it was me. Hundreds of versions of me, standing motionless in rows, eyes open, chests rising in perfect sync. I screamed. Their mouths opened at the same time, and I heard the hum pour out of them in unison. Phase 3 complete. The glass cracked from the vibration. I turned and ran. Counterclockwise arrows buttoned the return. Then, like a film reel cutting mid-frame, I was outside, back in the clearing. The forest quiet, moon high, cabin still standing. But something was wrong. The ground was covered in frost. The air burned cold in my lungs. And the trees, they were taller. Much taller. Their trunks smooth, silver gray instead of brown. My cabin door hung open. Inside, everything was covered in dust thick as ash. I checked the calendar pinned above the sink. The date read September 14th, 2027. 2 years after the abduction. I dropped to my knees. My body still looked the same. My hands, my hair, all of it untouched. But I'd lost 2 years. Brain the scar. That night, I tried to sleep, but my head wouldn't stop ringing. Then, the scar behind my ear began to move. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, and when I pressed on it, I felt something shift underneath. Something alive. I stumbled to the mirror, grabbed my flashlight, and tilted my head. Just beneath the scar, I could see faint metallic glints, like wires buried under skin. And then I heard it. The hum again, but not external. This time, it came with words. Not heard, but translated directly into thought. You have been returned. Integration begins. I screamed, clawing at the scar, but every time I touched it, my vision blurred, and images flooded my head. Cities made of light, machines orbiting dark stars, a planet with no sun, only endless white sky. Millions of beings, thin, towering, standing in silence, and in the middle of them all, a human shape. Me. Radio the broadcast. By the third day, my old radio turned itself on again. It played the same voice, the woman, now louder, clearer. Phase 4 initialized. Subject stable. Cognitive patterns confirmed. Then softly, "Welcome home, Evan." I tried smashing it. The moment it broke, every other electronic device in the cabin powered on. The TV, the dead phone, the stove clock, all blinking 3:33. And from the static on every screen, a faint image emerged. A forest, my forest, viewed from above. Geometric lines burned into the soil, forming a massive, pulsating circle. At its center, the cabin. And in the middle of that, a glowing that pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Evergreen Tree, the town that forgot. I left the woods the next morning. I don't know how. Maybe the forest let me go. The road was back, exactly as before. When I finally reached Whitlow Ridge town proper, nothing looked the same. New buildings. New faces. No one recognized me. When I asked about the cabin, people said the land had been empty for years, that the Clark family house had burned down long ago. I showed them my hands, the old calluses, the scar behind my ear. They just stared. "You should go home, sir," one man said gently. "There's nothing up there anymore." That's when I saw the newspaper on the counter. Local man found dead in forest cabin, 2025. My picture beneath it. Flying saucer, the realization. I drove back anyway. The cabin stood exactly where it always had, but now it was hollow. Every wall, every object inside was a shell, made of some thin material that looked like wood but wasn't. And when I stood in the middle of the room, the hum started again, faded first, then building until the floor trembled. A voice, my own voice, filled the air. "You were chosen before you were born. The machine remembers its maker." The walls rippled, turning to light. I fell to my knees. The forest outside glowed silver. And from the trees, the tall figures appeared again. Hundreds of them, surrounding the clearing. Each one looked identical to me. They all spoke in unison. "Welcome to the hollow return." The light engulfed everything. And then silence. Whole aftermath. When I woke again, I was lying on the same hospital bed from before. Only this time, I was watching myself through the window, asleep, still hooked to the floor, still breathing. And behind me, I heard the hum. It wasn't coming from the machines. It was coming from inside me. "Phase 4 complete," the woman's voice said softly. "Final transmission begins." I turned around and saw my reflection smiling before I did.